For teleSUR, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa has denounced the United States' 5-decade-old economic embargo on Cuba, saying that the measure is a direct violation of international law. He made his statements at the opening ceremony of the Conference of Latin American Progressives and Left-Leaning Political Parties in Quito. Correa reminded those in attendance that the United Nations has condemned the blockade on 21 separate occasions. He also criticized the Organization of American States for putting the interests of the U.S. ahead of other member countries. Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallem has accused the U.S. of using a policy of double standards in the fighting of terrorism in the region. While addressing the 69th session of the UN General Assembly in New York, the Syrian minister criticized Washington for launching airstrikes on some extremist fighters in Syria while providing money, weapons, and training to others. He also accused U.S. Arab allies in the region of providing support to terrorist organizations, including Islamic State extremists. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian also strongly criticized the U.S. campaign against the Islamic State. He said that Washington's, quote, insane airstrikes are bolstering the position of terrorists in the region while destroying the country's infrastructure. U.S. President Barack Obama has recognized that Washington's intelligence officials underestimated the threat posed by the Islamic State and overestimated the Iraqi army's capacity to defeat the extremist group. He added that ISIS militants went underground after being squashed in Iraq and regrouped under the cover of the Syrian civil war. Brazilians will head to the polls Sunday to make a decision in what has become a dramatic presidential campaign. Our correspondent Stephanie Montalan is following the elections that could have implications for the entire Latin American region.
Hello, yes, well, teleSUR English arrived in Rio this morning to discover a relatively peaceful city. Peaceful, considering that this Sunday, Latin America will celebrate arguably its most important general elections. Over 142 million people will be taking part this Sunday. Now, there are many candidates, but all eyes are on current President Dilma Rousseff and opposition candidate Marina Silva. Dilma will be defending the legacy of her government, the legacy of the Workers' Party, a party which has pushed forward a socialist agenda in the past 12 years, cutting back on unemployment and reducing poverty. Marina, on the other hand, is going for a more neoliberal approach, wanting to make independent the central bank and reducing social spending. This Sunday, Brazilians across the country will elect governors, senators, deputies, but most importantly, their president, who will continue to lead the world's 7th largest economy. It's a tight race, but not always for the right reasons. For many of the shop owners here in Rio, it is business as usual. Several years of economic growth and political stability mean that people are happy to take part this Sunday. Although the right has a solid base in important cities such as Rio de Janeiro, current President Dilma Rousseff maintains much of her popularity due to the successful legacy of the Workers' Party and the formation of key alliances. Meanwhile, the streets of Rio remain calm, confident that this Sunday elections will proceed peacefully, a testament to the democratic Brazil of today. Stephanie Kennedy, teleSUR, Rio.
And thanks to Stephanie, we look forward to her reports over the next week. The latest opinion polls in Brazil reveal that Dilma Rousseff has widened her lead over her nearest rival, Marina Silva. New data released Monday by the polling firm MDA shows that Rousseff would win in a first-round vote this Sunday with just over 40% of the vote, compared to Silva, who would earn slightly over 25% support. The survey also found that in the case of a runoff election set for October 26th, Rousseff would win with almost 48% of the vote. Silva has lost momentum in a potential second round, with polls showing her support at just under 39%. Police and military forces in Mexico have been under heavy criticism recently following the massacre of 22 civilians and accusations of other human rights abuses. During the government of President Enrique Peña Nieto, violent deaths have increased to over 36,000, Our correspondent in Mexico is following the latest incident involving Mexican authorities.
22 municipal police have been detained in the community of Iguala in the state of Guerrero after they reportedly opened fire on 2 busloads of college-age students from the Ayotzinapa Normal School. The attack has left 8 people dead, with more than 25 injured, and at least 58 students disappeared. The Army and federal police have taken control of the area. Witnesses said the buses were stopped on Friday night by police roadblock and were fired upon without warning. The authorities affirm that the buses were hijacked by the students. However, the students argue that the drivers loaned them the service so that they could travel to area communities in a fund drive for their classes. Students are calling for a strike this week and demand that the mayor of Iguala be prosecuted, as well as the Guerrero state governor. Family members call the attacks extrajudicial murders. In 2012, 2 students from the same school were killed by police in protest, and last year 2 others were run down as they were collecting money for their classes.
And thanks to Clayton, peace talks between the FARC rebels and Colombian government have continued to show progress in Havana, Cuba. As a result, paramilitaries who are opposed to the talks have increased their attacks against journalists, human rights activists, and politicians, touting the achievements. Here's our correspondent in Colombia, Charles Parkinson.
In an official communication released on Friday 26th of September, the government delegation at Colombia's peace talks in Havana denounced the interception of the electronic communications of chief negotiator Humberto de la Calle. Now, as yet it's unknown who's behind these interceptions, but what is known is that this is the latest attack on the peace process, following 2 weeks of threats against supporters of the peace process by paramilitary groups. Now, there are very powerful groups from the extreme right who are against the negotiations in Havana. And what this tells us is that essentially we're seeing success at the moment. We're seeing advances in the process. And as we see more advances, we're likely to see more attacks. Charles Parkinson in Bogota, Colombia.
And thanks to Charles, Spain's constitutional court has temporarily suspended an independence referendum called by the northeastern region of Catalonia, which had been scheduled for November 9th. The decision comes after the national government launched a legal case claiming the planned constellation would be illegal. The court issued the decision hours after Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy denounced the planned vote, saying the potential decree represents a grave attack on the rights of all Spaniards. Millions of Catalonians have recently rallied in favor of independence from Spain. Ukrainian authorities warned today that groups beyond the control of rebel leaders in the country's eastern region were continuing attacks on army forces, threatening the already shaky truce agreed upon on September 5th. Kiev officials said at least 9 soldiers were killed and 27 wounded in just 1 day of clashes, 7 of them in a single attack by rebels close to the Donetsk airport. Russia has announced that its investigative committee will look into what it called genocidal actions by the Western-backed forces of Ukraine. In a statement, Moscow accused the Ukrainian military of targeting Russian-speaking citizens. NGOs have said that at least 3,500 people have died in Donetsk and Lugansk, and that over 350,000 civilians have been displaced. An international group of professional cricket players has set a new record for playing a match at the highest altitude ever played. They played it at, get this, the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. The game was played at almost 20,000 feet in the center of the volcano just below the dormant summit. The level of oxygen there is just half that at sea level. The previous record for the world's highest game had been at 17,000 feet, and it was played in the Himalayas at the Everest Base Camp in Nepal in 2009. Who knew they kept those records? More on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For teleSUR English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.